Hey guys, how you doing? So Dan from Trading with Dan here. So I was reading this interesting article yesterday that I thought I'd do a quick video on. So the article title is an op-ed from RT News, and its title is COVID-19 has already sparked huge state intervention. We should go further and start requisitioning the empty homes of the rich. So firstly, I just wanted to highlight, this is by a Dr.Lisa McKenzie, working class academic. I mean, I'm not sure why she calls herself a working class academic. She obviously that's a self-proclaimed title. She likes to get that in there. I'm guessing because she's a socialist. Lots of people in academia are. And yeah, lots of people that then want to say they're working class, even though they're socialists, and they consider themselves as part of the intellectual elite, which is maybe different to the financial elite that you have in a capitalist system. She wants to be part of a socialist system where she is an intellectual elite. So anyway, an assistant professor in sociology at the University of Durham, political activist, writer and thinker, and this is her Twitter, which I'm not gonna follow. Anyway, so right, here we go. After bailing out businesses and paying everyone's wages, the government should now commandeer the vacant houses of the wealthy and turn them into emergency hospitals or accommodation for key workers and the homeless. So firstly, I don't want to interrupt the whole article, but firstly, I mean, this is what socialists do. I mean, their underlying agenda is to basically commandeer the wealth of people and the nation, and then just run it themselves because they think they know better. But she's thinly disguising this. Well, yeah, with the excuse of it's to turn them into emergency hospitals or accommodation for key workers and the homeless. So anyway, so residents in large cities across the globe over the last decade have watched and suffered the consequences of huge glass and chrome blocks of ultra luxury apartments rising as almost a violent act into the skylines, whilst the poor and the homeless have faced benefit cuts and been subject to social engineering. The international wealthy have poured their money into these giant safety deposit boxes that now blight all major cities. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to write a piece, if you're going to write something, just try not to be so openly biased. I mean, saying things like glass and chrome blocks rising violently into the sky, I mean, it's just a ludicrous thing to say. And then, saying that they are socially engineering the poor, but she wants to social engineer everybody, and they're saying they're a blight across all major cities. I mean, you cannot say whether people can afford to live in them or not. Ultra luxury apartments are not a blight across major cities. They are an investment, an asset that basically raises the prices of things. It gentrifies certain areas. I mean, there are obviously social consequences for people that live there, and then people that then want to live there, but I mean, you can't necessarily call them a blight unless you are coming from like a socialist angle, which she clearly is. Anyway, most of what is euphemistically termed buy-to-leave investments, so euphemism, so a buy-to-leave investments where the owner, often from abroad, is so wealthy they don't need to let the property out and it stands empty rather than being used as a house for people. I mean, I guess this is right. I mean, they are buy-to-leave. I mean, they are buying them as investments, just much the same way that people may buy like a brand new sports car as an investment, but then never drive it and keep it in pristine, perfect condition. I mean, that's the same as what they're doing with these houses. I mean, they don't necessarily need the rental income. It's maybe a store of wealth. It's maybe like a currency hedge against like wherever country they're actually from, the value that's invested in that property. Maybe they expect prices to rise anyway more than the rent they could get, the yield they could get from the asset anyway. I mean, there are many reasons why they would have them basically empty. But I mean, that is their own decision, I guess. In 2018, a study showed there were more than 22,000 homes in London that had been lying vacant for at least 6 months, many of them years. Unsurprisingly, the worst place was the City of London, the tiny central area that is home to the investment banks and rich fund managers, and where the average price for a home runs into the millions. Here, 38 homes in every 1,000 sit empty. A good place for the government to first send its teams of property requisitioneers would be to the North London borough of Barnet, where homes that are worth an eye-watering 770 million. So obviously that's combined. I was thinking, wow, that's expensive for a home, but yeah, that's the combined value, have been left vacant between 2 and 4 years. Yeah, so it's basically theft. She's basically advocating state-sponsored theft. So specifically, they should be they should set their sat navs to take them to Bishop's Avenue in Hampstead. I used to live in Hampstead. It's a nice place, which is one of the most exclusive streets in the UK, and glories in being called Billionaires Row. Yet 16 out of the street's 66 luxury mansions which sell for 15 million or more have been unlived in for years. I mean, you just have to understand that when you are a billionaire, you diversify your assets. Some of those assets are going to be property, and you can't live in them all. I mean, it's a simple concept. But then, because you're a billionaire and you own more than one house, it's difficult to then say you can then have that house requisitioned, basically stolen. That must be how socialist, that must be the socialist word for steal, requisition. But anyway, yeah. Right, so as the government scrambles to find enough beds to treat all the expected COVID-19 sufferers, why not turn them into makeshift hospitals or homes for some of the hundreds of thousands of people languishing on waiting lists for council houses, some of whom are forced into street homelessness, whose tents and sleeping bags have become part of the street furniture alongside graffiti and thousands of renter bikes. I mean, it's just not the best solution, is it, really? You can't just be requisitioning. I mean, just think of the value destruction alone in those areas, and like what would happen if you just move loads of homeless people or start turning into like COVID hospitals. I mean, this sounds to me like the typical authoritarian never let a good crisis go to waste. So she's like, well, we've got this COVID-19 is really bad. We should use this as the excuse to requisition these homes. So yeah, so interesting concept. It is a similar story across Europe. A 2017 report found 26% of homes were empty in central Paris. There were 600,000 empty apartments across Germany, where activists in Berlin are showing the way all countries should go by pushing for the renationalisation of up to 200,000 council flats which were sold off to corporate landlords. I mean, that is different. If you got 600,000 empty apartments, which are obviously small housing units, and 600,000 is a large number, this doesn't compare to what she's trying to say, that we should be basically turning mansions into dollhouses. And I mean, a renationalisation of up to 200,000 council flats which were sold off to corporate landlords. I mean, if they're sold off to corporate landlords, then I mean, it is different. I mean, I still don't advocate it, but it isn't comparable to what she is suggesting. So anyway, I lived in London from 2013 until 2019 before being forced to leave and move north, because even as a lecturer at a university, the cost of my private rent was so high it took 60% of my income, and meant I had to take out payday loans to buy basic things. She wouldn't have been taking out payday loans for basic things like on a continual basis. That is not sustainable. She may have done that once or twice, and I mean, there's lots to do in London. You choose to live in London because of you choose to live in London. I mean, you'll get paid more. There's better job opportunities. There's more things to do. I mean, you do sacrifice of what you pay with your rental costs, and then you decide where you live in London. You can live in somewhere that isn't as a do you know what I mean, a bougie neighbourhood that these sort of socialists, intellectual elites like to congregate in. You know, those sort of I don't know the word to describe it. Those fashionable areas. I mean, she probably doesn't have to maybe live in those sort of areas. She could live somewhere different and commute. But yeah, but fair enough though. That's fine. Travel up north. I mean, it's not a problem. People are still making the choice to lecture at the universities in London. So, an ethnographic research project I undertook in the capital between 2014 and 2018 focused on class cleansing, the practice of local councils of removing poorer residents from the boroughs as they had become a problem because no genuinely affordable housing was available. Many thousands of families were encouraged to leave their communities and move hundreds of miles away without any support. I met women and children who told me their stories of being bussed out of London, allowed only to take what they could carry, and being given an address by officials to faraway towns they've never heard of. Often these places were deemed to be economically left behind. There has been specific policy to move the poorest people to impoverished places. It's not just social engineering, but social cleansing. Yeah, it's strange. I mean, it may be, if that is true, I mean, it may sound like it's social cleansing of a certain area, but it sounds like if these are the poorest people, my guess is that these people are migrants or immigrants that have basically been given council places, and they're obviously moving to places where there's more council places for them to go to. I mean, that's what that does sound like to me. Especially seeing as she's saying it's ethnographic research that she was doing. So obviously she was looking at people from different ethnicities. So these people probably were indigenous. They probably moved here from wherever they came from, and then it's not necessarily their right to live in a place where the council puts them in London. They can move them to another place. I mean, that doesn't seem unreasonable to me. So anyway, meanwhile, local councils in London have also undertaken the mass demolition of social housing estates to replace them with yet more private apartments. The Elephant and Castle and Southwark has been completely gentrified in the past 6 years by this process. Small wonder that homelessness in Southwark has increased by over 50% in recent years. At the same time, as apartments with a price tag of up to 50 million in the Shard, the borough's building is often seen as London's jewel, sits empty. I mean, yeah, these are two separate subjects. I mean, okay, if areas are gentrified, people that do live there already, they do get a lot more money for their places when they sell them and they move out. And it isn't those people that lived in those areas that then sold those houses for increased sums that are then just having to then go and live on the street because they have to still be in the same area and live on the street. A homelessness problem is a homelessness problem. Those people are mobile and they move to different areas, so they're not going to be the same people that are living there homeless because they basically built the Shard or other expensive places, and don't have these other council places. That there's other council places available elsewhere, and if there's homeless people aren't living there, then they're obviously not living in council places, are they? So anyway, gleaming ghost towers built for the 0.1% sit empty all over the castle, all over the capital, whilst the poorest sleep on cardboard in the streets below, and working class mothers hold the hands of their children while being bussed to some distant town. She's definitely a good artist with her words. She's definitely painting the picture she wants to paint. In Manchester's Canal Street, I lived in Manchester as well. In Manchester's Canal Street, once a place that was carved out by the gay community as somewhere creativity, art and music flourished, now a mass of cranes and builders and hard hats construction apartments already bought off plan by the international wealthy, while 6,000 people in the city are homeless, a figure that excludes the hidden homeless, those staying with family members and friends. So yeah, I mean, Canal Street is still a place where the gay community just do whatever they want to do there. I mean, it is popular with them. I mean, they are rich gay people that can buy these places to live there. I mean, the Manchester city centre is expensive anyway. It's not like it's getting gentrified by these places. I mean, if there's demand for them, there's demand for them. If prices are there, I mean, I just don't see that. And then she just says, well, 600 people are homeless. So yeah, I mean, they don't have to live in those areas. I mean, she should just be advocating the building of more low cost housing, or council housing, or things like that, or shelters, or hostels and things in wherever the space for them. I mean, that does seem to be the correct solution. She's just conflating two issues together, just to paint her picture, basically. Some local councils have attempted to solve the housing crisis not by ending demolitions of social housing or building more, but by putting homeless people and families with children in hostels or into converted office premises and cheap hotel chains. Okay, yeah, I mean, like I said, this is the problem. They need to be building more social housing, more hostels, more places for them to be. I mean, that's what you need to do. Anyway, so the COVID-19 crisis demonstrates the wisdom of this policy when hundreds of residents on the budget hotel chain Travelodge were turfed out onto the street after it closed. Most of them were families that had nowhere to live. COVID-19 is pulling back the curtain of our financially corrupt system. Yeah, I wouldn't argue that our system is financially corrupt. Our system is. We live in a basically crony capitalism. That is correct. And then, yeah, people will be committing individual crony crime, financial crimes anyway, and each of those individual people should maybe be looked at into the corruption that they're involved in, and then their assets can then be dealt with accordingly if they're found guilty of whatever sort of corruption. That is fine, but just to arbitrarily go and just take the empty houses is not the viable solution. So anyway, so as we witness self-employed construction workers continuing to squeeze onto public transport, with emergency workers who are on the front line protecting us, who are having to travel into the cities they have been priced out of. So it seems property developers are more powerful than the elected representatives. I mean, I don't really know why she says self-employed construction workers. I mean, I don't know if she's just a survey on whether they are or not, but if you're a construction worker, I mean, a lot of them are self-employed, and they'll move from project to project, and it's just how they want to run their finances. I mean, it's not it's not necessarily a bad thing for them anyway, or the economy. I propose all these empty gleaming buildings be requisitioned immediately for emergency workers in our hospitals and supermarkets and public transport. My friend, a nurse from Manchester, who has this week been redeployed to a central London hospital to look after the sick and dying, deserves a luxury apartment to rest in. So yeah, I mean, there it is. There she sums up what she's saying. She is then using this, using the emotive public response to this to then try and further her socialist agenda. I mean, it's that simple. This is just a hit piece against basically rich people, because she's a socialist and wants to then use this pandemic that we've got going on to further her causes. So yeah, so there you go. Well done, whatever was your name again, Dr.Lisa McKenzie. Way to go. I mean, yeah, I mean, there you go, summed you up. Anyway, so alright, so there's not a financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Yeah, well done, guys, if you managed to listen through my whole little rant there. Not too much more to say on that subject. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.